I received a 30 kilogram heavy mega package with truly unbelievable contents. This package was sent to me by the super kind and generous viewer going by the name of Chris/Krumschi. At first, there was talk of some retro hardware, but guys, that quickly escalated and I wasn't even aware of most of what was awaiting me in this package. Chris/Krumschi obviously decided to make this a huge surprise, and I'm still amazed by it, a few days later even. It's super rare seeing and more so receiving a care package like this one. Thank you so much, Chris. But I will not keep you waiting any longer, let's get to it. Right away you can tell this has been packaged, organized and padded really well, Tetris style. The packaging skills are top notch, no question about it. The first box inside has already written RGB over it, so the RGB fans among you can already place your bets on some sort of an FPS boost. Then there's a strange original packaging of a Microsoft Surface Pro that has come to light. Can such a thing really be inside here? Let's wait and see. Next is a pretty large project box that needs to be lifted out, more on that in a bit. Followed by a second similarly sized package. After a bit of digging, a mighty Noctua high-end air cooler appears. Then there's an extra wrapped in wrapping paper, an air cooler, obviously belonging to an older Intel socket, followed by some kind of nicely padded, fairly lightweight device with a power adapter sticking out. There are also two smaller, flat packages hidden and wrapped with a nice gift ribbon. Now there's even packaging of a Radeon Pro W5500 workstation graphics card appearing, and that card should actually be in there, this much I know. Then some special handcrafted packaging with mystery contents. Next, a Logitech MX Keys keyboard is appearing, which funnily enough I was later told was practically only in there for padding. After some more digging around, a slightly bigger and fairly heavy package comes to light, and I think that's about it for now. So let's put away this huge main box and take a closer look at those individual packages and things. As we saw earlier, a Logitech keyboard, MX Keys to be exact. I've actually never had one of these, but frankly, I can always put peripherals to good use, be it for the test system or any other random projects. I also received an old Arctic air cooler for an Intel retro system that we saw a minute ago. Next, I slowly and carefully work my way into the next thing. After a lengthy struggle with the packing material, I am amazed to see what is obviously a practically brand new TP-Link router. And not just any router, but the AX55 model featuring the Wi-Fi 6 standard. How cool is that? I'll definitely integrate this one into my workstation network, since my current network I have going on right now is a bit lousy to say the least. Now to the Noctua air cooler we've seen before. By the way, I knew this one was inside here. This is the NHD15S. I will most likely include that one in a charts of future CPU cooler reviews and tests for better reference. I'll finally also be able to feature it for the LJ1700 test system. Chris also decided to include a little extra for me. This is an additional fan for that Noctua cooler in black. With this, I more or less can convert the mentioned NHD15S into an even more powerful NHD15. Two birds with one stone. Perfect for future charts and comparisons. Next, I'm going to take a look at a similarly sized package. In there are apparently spreads or whatever these are. I've actually never tried or seen any of these in my life before. Lucky for me, Chris left a note basically saying for bread. Otherwise, I would have had to Google it first, and I'm not even kidding. Now to that AMD workstation card. Inside the packaging, there's a DVI to DisplayPort adapter as an accessory. I've never seen one in real life before. And then we finally get to see that real beauty. This blue and silver design by AMD already left quite the impression on me years ago. But Chris made it clear to me in advance that this card is partially defective, faulty. It should apparently work great with one monitor, but once you hook up a second monitor, you're playing Russian roulette. We see random restarts after either 20 seconds or 20 minutes. When Chris sent this card to RMA, it came back with a very visible dent on the fan shroud. No repairs were carried out because the customer supposedly is to blame for all that happened to this card. But that's not true. Chris was really annoyed by that, and believe it or not, I've had something like this happen to me before. That was back when I was going through an RMA process for a Shure microphone. I sent Shure the mic, nothing got repaired nor replaced, but the microphone got sent back to me with a cosmetically unappealing dent along with scratches that were not there before. That's really annoying and did in fact make me quite mad. Anyway, I'll have to see how and if I can put this W5500 to use. If I find no use for it, I'll just use it for decoration. Moving on to that Microsoft Surface Pro. Oh, sorry, Linux Surface Pro. For me, it's actually the first time I've seen such a device in person. Even the type cover is included. And then we see the elegant Surface Pro device, beautifully packaged. The charger and charging cable are included. A device like this sure is something special, in my opinion. Chris and I have been in touch for quite a while now, and if you ask me, he's to be considered a Linux professional in my eyes. And because I have zero knowledge when it comes to Linux and close to no experience at all with it, this kinda eliminates any of the excuses to not give Linux a try. These practically are my baby steps towards the world of Linux. Chris, simply got rid of Windows that was on here and instead put Linux on it, which actually isn't officially supported at all. Drivers and everything surrounding those have been taken care of already. Everything runs smoothly and as it should. I guess I'll gradually practice using Linux in my free time from now on. This device is only intended to get me started. Now let's move on to the next package. It's going to be colorful. It contains all kinds of RGB stuff. I'm being honest with you, most of it I don't even recognize or know how it's supposed to work. However, it becomes clear to me that Chris is a real RGB fanatic, and he sure does have really elaborate lighting going on in his personal kingdom, and I'm not only talking of his PC. Anyway, I'll sure have something to play around with in my free time. And now to the packaging this whole thing was originally about. But here too, there seem to be much bigger surprises awaiting me than I initially expected, because in here there are now 3 different retro systems of different eras and in all completeness, including SSDs and HDD, sound cards and even graphics cards. I really like the attached sheet with the summary of things in here, so I want to take it off carefully without causing any damage to it. After a few minutes worth of work, I'm already being greeted by Windows CDs, namely Windows XP, Windows 7 in 32 and 64-bit versions, as well as even the legendary Windows 98. Then I guess it's about time to unbox and organize all that stuff in there. Since that would take a while in front of the camera, let's fast forward and I'll show you what's inside in a more organized fashion. Obviously, there's tons of hardware. I'm pretty much overwhelmed by the sheer amount of retro hardware I got sent, but in a good way, especially since I'm not only looking at this as regular retro products. Starting off with the left, the 2600 Plus project. First, there's the MSI K7N2 Delta 2 motherboard, pre-installed in it, the legendary AMD Athlon XP 2600 Plus. In case I need to replace it, he included a second 2600 Plus for me, plus an antique matching CPU cooler, really pretty red G-Skill RAM in its original packaging, 2 1GB modules, a 500 watt power supply for this platform, a Corsair Force 120GB SSD because trim functionality can apparently be retrofitted using third-party drivers. Furthermore, we can choose to work with either Windows 98 or XP. Everything's already pre-installed and set up, dual boot. Finally, there's a powerful MSI Radeon 9800 XXL, or rather a 9800 Pro. An IDE cable along with the I/O backplate are included. Now let's deal with the system in the middle. The motherboard is the Asus P5Q Turbo, an Intel Core 2 Duo E8500 CPU already being placed and secured in the socket, 2x2GB of RAM also being pre-installed, plus some spare RAM, namely 2x1GB, then a matching fitting CPU cooler, the one we've seen before, and as for the graphics card, an NVIDIA GTX 260 with that powerful aftermarket Arctic cooler. The external audio solution being the Creative Sound Blaster Surround 5.1 Omni, or whatever that thing is called. finally, the system on the right. That one makes me a bit sentimental because it was at this time and era my personal hardware journey began. It began for me with a system like this. The motherboard, truly high-end for its time, the Asus Crosshair 3 Formula. Seated in that AM3 socket right now is the legendary AMD Phenom 2 X4 965. I used to have that exact one back in the day I built my first computer. Windows XP and Windows 7 are configured to run in dual boot on the included Samsung 860 EVO 250GB SSD. In addition to that, there's also a Samsung 1TB HDD with 7200 RPM. However, because that Crosshair board doesn't come with any onboard audio, Chris included the incredible Azintec XFi 47.1 sound card. I've never had one, but it is said that it's been great in its time. An I/O backplate, of course, being included, along with another highlight, a GTX 760 graphics card, the NVIDIA reference design at the time. Maybe not entirely appropriate for the era, because that GPU was released in 2013, but there is real performance to be seen in games, because that Phenom 2 X4 still was doing fairly well at the time. In addition, I was given a few extras, such as PCIe adapters, SATA cables, and some thermal paste. Some of that stuff meant for a different special project, as it occurred to me a bit later, and, as seen before, Windows installation CDs. But the surprises don't end here, by far not. When I saw the label on the next package saying NAS, my knees got a little weak. Only few people know that I'm running out of space on my current QNAP 10GB NAS, and I am dependent on a fast NAS for my video production. Apparently, Chris built and set up an OMV-based NAS for me. To be honest, I myself am a complete newbie. No, even worse, I know nothing about setting up a personal NAS from scratch. At some point, I had a discussion with Chris about that, and now would you look at that? I'm a complete newbie, but if I manage to get this NAS in here to work properly, I will save myself at least 600 euros that I would have otherwise had to spend sometime this year. And that's even without including the price for hard drives. Honestly, that's been giving me headaches for a long time now. Fortunately, Chris provided me with all the access information along with short instructions. So I'll quickly unbox this package and I'll be back once the deed is done. Alright, the scope of delivery is much larger here than I initially assumed. This is a complete full NAS down to the smallest detail with icing on the cake. So I don't even know what to say here. I'm speechless. At the heart of it is a Gigabyte Z170 board with an i5-6400, which Chris limited to run at 25 watts to save power for NAS use, plus 2x 8GB of RAM, a beefy Samsung 970 EVO Plus for speed tests, awesome, a crucial 500GB SATA SSD, followed by two 4TB Western Digital NAS hard drives that are mirrored. These are intended to serve as a test or transition for me, and he, Chris, advises me to then upgrade to my desired 10TB as soon as possible. Also included SATA cables, an air cooler with a quiet Arctic fan, and an Enermax Max Pro 2 600-watt power supply. And since Chris is fully aware of the fact that handling 4K video files over a 2.5 gigabit per second connection is pretty slow and stuttery while video editing, he tops things off with a new TP-Link 10 gigabit network card, a cable being included. Well, I have to say, the NAS is incredible. You can't even imagine how much of a relief this is for me and how much money I just saved. Furthermore, I can just virtually expand and expand such a NAS. The sky's the limit, and that simply wouldn't have been possible with a off-the-shelf NAS by QNAP, for instance. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But we're not done unboxing just yet. I was also provided with something for my breaks. And oh my goodness, the sight of so much candy, well, you don't see that every day. I think that should last me quite a while. This will certainly sweeten my breaks for sure, pun intended. I have now spent hours in my studio unboxing. Now I've reached the end, the final package with that pretty ribbon on it. At that point, I didn't even remotely suspect of what was awaiting me. I couldn't believe my eyes. a Corsair MP700 with 1TB. This is an M.2 NVMe SSD based on PCIe 5.0 x4 bandwidth. Not even in my wildest dreams would I've ever thought I'd personally be installing something this fast in my system, at least not for years to come. This should allow for up to 9.5 GB per second read and up to 8.5 GB write speeds. But wait, there's more, and this is where I thought I need to sit down. A whopping 64 GB of Corsair Vengeance RGB memory, DDR5 clocked at 6400 MHz, and that's at even remarkable timings given the high clock speed, in my opinion. I immediately realized what this would mean for my workstation setup. Combined with a huge savings thanks to that NAS and now thanks to the SSD and this DDR5 64GB RAM, I will finally be able to upgrade my workhorse, my workstation PC. I've wanted to do that for years already. This was actually one of the last pieces of the puzzle, but I would have put it off for a long time because other costs were of higher priority. Numerous doors are now opening for me at once. I can't believe it. So it's really hard for me to put my thanks into words for the entire huge care package I received. It's just so intense, one becomes speechless. I don't even know if Chris is even aware of how many places he is helping me within, starting with the NAS all the way to the workstation upgrade that otherwise would have had to wait at least a year, if not longer. Then there also are these complete retro systems, which not only allow sentimental, beautiful projects to be created, but they also awaken nostalgia. And let's not forget all the RGB stuff, which should provide for a lot of free time activity for me. And then there's also the smooth and carefree entry into the world of Linux for me, thanks to that Linux Surface Pro. Finally, there are many extras, such as the Noctua cooler, the keyboard, the Radeon Pro card, and the candy to feast on. I've been told several times that there's no need to thank him, but I just can't help it. So here it is. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, dear Chris. Thank you for all your effort, all the hours of work you've put into this, and thank you for your incredible generosity towards me. Just wow.